welcome to Coffee with Craig. This is the show where myself, Craig Hamilton Parker, a psychic medium, talks all about the future. And today we're going to talk about 2026 and what's going to happen in 2026. So, welcome to Coffee with Craig. Well, if you're here for the first time, please do remember to subscribe to this channel. And if you come here lots, please give us a thumbs up because it helps the algorithm. And today we're going to talk about 2026 and what's going to be happening in 2026. And I know a lot of you look forward to this particular video because this is my long one that I try to do for the year ahead. So some of my main predictions are made in this show. Now, obviously, I can't cover everything under the sun because there's so much that will happen around the world. But I'm trying to cover as many things as I can on a worldwide perspective. Cover as many countries as I can and as many issues as I can. And hopefully it'll be interesting to you. And don't forget to give me your comments as we go through too, because that's also very helpful too, because it's interesting to look back on. And a lot of psychics and a lot of astrologers come to this show, and some of your insights are very interesting as well, of course, all in the comments, because we formed a sort of a community around this channel in many ways. Now, this is going to be quite a long program, so make sure you've got your cup of coffee because I'm going to cover lots of things. I'm going to do it in sections this time. I'm going to do the economy. I'm doing a section about social unrest because that's a major issue that's coming up. Immigration and those problems, religion, and particularly the influence of Islam. I'll do a whole section on wars and conflicts, political changes happening in the world. Lots on that, of course, and we'll cover lots of countries with that. Environmental and earth changes, technology and medicine, a little bit about the royal family, though most of that I've covered in my other videos, and even some sports and entertainment. So it's obviously going to take quite a bit of time to go through all this. And I'm sure you'll get lots of adverts interrupting you between each section. So you might want to watch this show in parts. But anyway, the first section we're going to begin with is the economy. And I would like to say also thank you to all the patrons who've helped me with this in many ways by asking your questions. Not just the patrons, also the YouTube members as well, because I often ask you in little videos, what would you like me to look into and any particular issues in your country and so forth. And you've given me your questions and I've assembled some of those and they've been helpful in making this possible. And if you'd like to become a patron, do have a look in the section below. And I will be looking at all of these issues again, hopefully, or some of them at least, by doing a few Zoom sessions with our patrons. Okay, let's get started. First issue I'm going to deal with is the economy. Well, I feel that the economy is going to be a bit of a sticky issue through 2026. I'm going to give you some of my predictions now. I've listed them in front of my screen here, so I'll refer to them, but also talk around them a little bit too. The first one, I feel, is that they've been talking about the AI bubble. We had, just like we had the problems with the people over-investing in the .com revolution, as it were. Now we've had an AI revolution and everybody's been pouring their money into this. But my feeling is that we will see in 2026 an adjustment on this. There'll be a big correction in the markets that will see stocks fall quite radically because of the perhaps over-investment in everything that's AI. I've talked about it before earlier in the year a bit already and pre-warned on this, but I feel that it's coming this time round. It's a bit like the South Sea bubble. Everybody pours money into it. The same thing happens a lot with these Bitcoins and things. It's all right when it's going up, but it can pop. And I feel that there's going to be a big adjustment in all of these areas around the springtime. This will be it'll affect people worldwide. And much of this is really just caused by overvaluation of AI stocks. So the bubble bursts. But fortunately, I also feel that this isn't going to bring us a disaster for the world. It will just mean that it's going to be a short-lived thing because things will readjust again and come back to a bit of a normality. Because everybody did it with the internet. Everybody thought the internet, that was it. But the internet's here to stay, and it's exactly the same with AI. It will be more like a big adjustment. Now, one of the financial markets that's obviously close to me is the UK, because I'm a British psychic, and I feel that there's going to be some serious concerns for the British economy in 2026, and some serious lack of faith from the markets. I'm doing this video on the 19th of November 2025. We haven't had our budget here yet, for example. The Epstein files are about to be released. So all of those things are happening in the background here in the UK and around the world, rather, with that, isn't it? But I feel that there's going to be a lot of loss of self-confidence right at the beginning of the year after our first this budget coming up. But also I feel that the UK is going to be particularly hard hit by global trends as well through 2026. And also a big loss of confidence in the UK government as public unrest here, I feel, will turn to anger. So the UK is in for a very rocky ride in 2026 as big adjustments are made. I know I get a lot of Canadian viewers here who say we always miss Canada, but I also felt there's a lot of disruption in Canada as well with your economies. In many respects, Canada's in a very similar position to what's been happening here in the UK. I'm seeing in Canada too much reliance on Chinese money, too much reliance on exports, too much reliance on selling to the USA. And I'm seeing for Canada a lot of manufacturing closures. And I particularly saw cows when I was doing my predictions. I'm sitting down to tune in because I get a lot of this sometimes through all sorts of strange imagery and visions that come to me when I sit in meditation, or I also note my dreams, and I just sit and use the I Ching and things to dive deep into these things. But I saw dairy farmers, so I feel there's going to be big protests, a bit like a big protest by dairy farmers over the cost of living there as well, and anger also about as house prices in Canada will also soar in 2026. So there's a big protest. I saw it a bit like the way they had that lorry drivers one before. I feel people out protesting. People are getting very upset at a lot of disruption with the Canadian economy. I also want to say I see the USMCA collapses as well. I feel the USA are going to pull out of this, and this will be also very difficult for Canada, particularly as it struggles to find new export markets. But in the long term, it's a bit like it's here for the UK as well. Sometimes these drastic changes are good in the long term. And although I feel, as I've said, I feel the UK will go through a lot of difficulties in 2026, I think this will match in Canada's. Talking the similar thing to Canada, as it were here, you're going to go through the hardships as well, but it will work out better for the long term with a much more robust economy, less dependent on the easy picking fruit, as it were. So I just see that, particularly I felt problems with the Canadian economy, and this will give us, like I say, protests and things about this. Australia's going to have a better time this year. I'm going to go into Australia in a lot more detail later. But I feel a boom in the USA exports of exports to the USA for rare earth deals, which I think will bring a major American investment into Australian industry. There's lots going on there. Lots of stuff going to happen with space and things like that too with Australia. So I've got a bit more to say about that later on, but generally quite a good trend for Australia. They're going to buck the trend, for the worldwide trend that is generally a little bit difficult due 2026. Now, China, I feel, is teetering on the edge, actually, economically. I know it's a very robust economy, of course, but it's at the same time, I feel there's a lot of hidden stuff there in China that's bringing gradually a structural economic decline in China, which will eventually begin to break. Now, whether that happens in 2026 or not, I'm not sure, but I feel this is a year that really shows the sort of visible sort of beginnings of the gradual loss of control of the Chinese Communist Party. And as they lose their economic control, they also lose their legitimacy. So there's going to be situations in China where we see workers going unpaid, bonds frozen, this sort of thing. They've got a housing market problem there as well. And all of these things I feel are coming to a head like a boil that's about to burst. And my feeling is that I've spoken a lot in the past about what will happen in China, and timing is also difficult, but it could be 2026 we start to see this really happening. I think there's going to be great difficulties because there's so much readjustment of the world's economies in 2026. And a lot of the global instability, which I'm going to talk about later in some of the other stuff, will impact oil markets worldwide. I'm seeing more sanctions put onto Russia, which is going to put a lot more pressure on whether China and Russia do energy deals. And I feel there's going to be some oil problem between Russia and China, which is going to exaggerate the problems further. So I'm seeing this, and also Europe turning off the pipes to Russian oil through 2026. All of these are going to be very important things that affect the world economy because oil drives things. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about Venezuela and particularly Venezuelan oil. And I'm seeing things ahead that's going to make other problems in that area, and particularly with Cuba, which I'm going to talk about later as well. But there's going to be a lot of instability in the oil markets. And I feel that there's going to be a point where Venezuelan oil is actually turned off for a period of time. It's almost like switched off entirely. Something stops it entirely, and it has a strong effect on oil values. So there's a bit of an energy crisis that's going to affect places like Cuba and places like many other adjoining South American countries, and also some of the worldwide market. I've got quite a few emails in sometimes from people in New Zealand asking about things. So I didn't pick a lot up for that, but I did feel as if there's when I saw New Zealand, and I looked at New Zealand for you guys, I saw problems with the housing market, and I feel that there's like what I suppose you would call a housing bubble bursts in New Zealand. So be very cautious with your property investments if that's where you're from. If you're from New Zealand, right? Now, cryptocurrencies go to all the countries of the world, and I feel that there's also going to be a very serious issue with cryptocurrencies. I feel that a well-known, and I'm not sure which one it is, so sorry about this, guys, but I don't think they show me this always, but I felt as if this is the year when we see the cryptocurrency problems. I see a leading coin collapse, possibly losing something between 40 to 70% of its value on one of the big ones. And it will be for a short period, but it will have this steep fall will be very bad. It could be Bitcoin, but I feel as if Bitcoin goes as well. It's like this. So there's possibly two of them that have problems. Possibly a new regulation coming in, I feel. I don't think there's anything out there talking about new regulations, but it's as if something's been stamped in that is perhaps it's created by these other economic issues that are happening around the world. But I feel Bitcoin will hit a wall. It's been going quite well, I believe, but it'll hit a wall, and then eventually it will all recover. That Bitcoin won't be gone forever, but I feel that's hit as well. But one of the major ones has a really major serious hit. Again, I feel it could come in two stages. First stage earlier in the year, then another one, a second stage, perhaps around late summer sort of time as we go into the fall. But certainly an initial one at springtime. So those are some of my thoughts about the economy of the world. Of course, one could make a whole program on that. And of course, I wouldn't see it all. I can only see bits and pieces. But so those are some of my first insights on the way things are going with the economy. And I know a lot of the crypto traders tend to often consult psychics. I don't know what the other guys are saying out there, but that's my feelings for the time. Okay, we'll move on to the next one, which is about social unrest. Now, here in the UK, we have had a great deal of social unrest, mainly about immigration. And I feel that there's still more to come with this in many respects. So I suppose, actually, I'm going to bring social unrest and immigration together. At the beginning of the show, I said I'd talk about the two issues, but I think they're so intertwined that I'll talk about the two now, actually. So when in the UK, much of it is unreported. I see it in my own hometown, people protesting outside of migrant hotels. When I talk to people abroad, we've got all sorts of upheavals and people upset and people up on the streets about migration. It's not just about illegal immigration, really, that people are upset about. It is migration full stop, and the feeling that cultures are being overwhelmed by too many people coming from other countries, and particularly people from other countries who have not had education, have not had any skills, and have not got anything much to offer a country. And this is creating a lot of pushback. We're hearing people on the street shouting about, we want our country back. That's one of the things they shout here in the UK. If you watch the programs of people that blog around these things, and the same thing's happening in, it's happening. Sweden's got serious problems with this. We've got it in the Netherlands, although the elections there didn't bring a government that was going to particularly deal with it to the level I think the populace would like. It's an issue that all parties have to address some way along the line. And I can't see that getting any better. In fact, I think this is going to still be... I spoke about it 2 or 3 years ago, about this, how it would become a growing problem and it would gradually create problems in Europe. This is why Britain left the European Union. So I see these immigrations becoming a major problem, not just in Europe, not just in the UK, but throughout the world. Even places like Japan, I see having issues about migration, and they don't have a bigger migration problem. But it's an issue around the world, and growing also, I feel, in America up to a point. Although they've dealt with their immigration crisis, they have still there's still problems such as the New York virus incident and things like that. They talk about this. There's all sorts of issues happening where there's also this strong movement to what I would call American Marxism, which others might call woke. And this, I feel, is still a problem for the years ahead. And it's going to take a long time before the universities, before the political institutions, before the judiciary and others are clear of this American Marxism, as I'm calling it. So there's still rebellion, and there's rebellion in the streets, and there's rebellion in America with this, and there's rebellions throughout the UK and over Europe. Places like France, places like Germany, even places that we would least expect, some of the Mediterranean countries fighting back against over-migration. This is going to change the political landscape a lot, but I feel that people are getting very restless about this, and we're going to see a lot of protests about this, including, I mentioned Canada again, because I always missed you out so much last time, but large Canadian protests I see as well. And also there about the cost of living and economic hardships that are beginning to hit. You know, it's all very well, people can be quite peaceful, but when you look at things, for example, like the Arab Spring and other social uprisings, they always came when the money ran out, and particularly when the food ran out. Food rocketing in value. I feel food will rocket in value in the 2026 and this year, and this means once people's money's run out and there's not enough money to go around to cover for everybody, then we end up with a lot of immigration-driven protests. People will always find a scapegoat as well. I'm not saying these things are good or right. I'm just saying these things happen, and I feel that in the UK it becomes the central crisis in UK politics. It's already happening. Everybody's wanting to vote for reform, as I'm talking now, but it's also going to feed, I feel, into political into a proper unrest, full unrest in the country, where things such as football matches and things like that become sparking points for quite a lot of problematic violence as time moves on. And it will mean a major political realignment with British politics, and it was similar things happening throughout the world, particularly in Europe itself. So this will bring a major backlash in many of the countries in the way ahead. It's going to be, I suppose, it don't take a psychic to tell you this now, because it's already happening. And but it was something you remember that I warned against a lot before, that I felt that I said a number of times when it was all very trendy to talk about social cohesion and multiculturalism and this sort of, camera blipped a bit, all this sort of thing, but I felt that it was going to bring division, and it has. And one of those main issues for division actually within the country is religious division, which is what I want to talk about next. So I want to talk now about some of the religious divisions that are happening in society. I'll get onto a lot more specific stuff about wars and politics and things for you as we move through this video. But with the anti-immigration movement beginning to happen around countries, I do see ahead there's going to be a lot of anti-Muslim riots, specifically across Europe, and a lot of social tensions will escalate about this. In fact, I'm seeing a very strong movement where people start to move towards the other extreme, as it were, and become much more Christian, not necessarily Christian values, but Christian as a tag, as a battleground almost. And I see the similar thing happening in the USA with rising tensions and friction between leftist and Islamic alliances, and more traditional American mindsets. There's going to be a big battle against this American Marxism that I see. It's like woke is developing into something new, into a very much a dangerous political force, and it may walk hand in hand with Islam. And we may find, and though America does not have as many Islamic people in it, and it is much more tolerant in some respects to multiple religions than not all countries in Europe are, I do feel that there's going to be signs that money's gone in it from other sources. And I also want to say with this, but there's also a lot of positive stuff happening as well around Islam, because I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, because I'm seeing a major revolution in Iran, which is going to change the world, the international reach of negative form of Islamism, and it's going to become much more positive. And I'm going to talk about that later, because Iran will go through a revolution this year, I sense, and the ancient Persian spiritual identity will be back on the stage, and a much more moderate form of Islam coming out of Iran, which might help to bring some of the pressure down and help to bring an end to the conflicts that I see ahead. Because when this revolution happens in Iran, which I'll talk about a little bit more, there's going to be a sort of a Sunni Shia realignment after Iran's revolution. Saudi Arabia and Iran will form a surprising diplomatic ties. And this will be very good for the world, because a lot of the conflicts in the Middle East are not just between Israel and Islam, but within Islam itself. And I'm seeing a lot more harmony being built between the different sectors within Islam. I also saw an attack on the Pope, actually, not from Islamic source, but I just felt as if there was an attack on the Pope by some nutcase as well. This is when I was making my thing. Writing my notes down here. I've got them in front of me about the way ahead with religion. But I feel he escapes unharmed. So that's a little bit of a worrying thing, but it's like, I don't feel he gets hurt, but it hits the newspapers. There is, and with this, there's changes in the world's attitudes to some of the Abrahamic religions, and including the rise of traditional Christian religion in Europe and the UK. And so this is kind of like a reaction to Islam and will cause a lot of tension. So there's good and bad. There's a softening on the Islamic side with the ideas of jihad and all those type of things. And there's also a strengthening in the Christian values, which is not necessarily a good thing to put those two into the pot. And I'm also seeing that there will rise in Europe a very outspoken Christian speaker who will call for a ban on Islam in Europe, which is clearly not going to help issues. But I see this happening. I see some extremist sort of voices like this. And I felt this would emerge from somewhere like the Netherlands or Germany. Because when I sometimes see and feel these things, I could hear it. I could hear it. It was sounded, because Dutch and German sound a bit similar to me. I don't speak either of the languages, but it felt like I could hear a voice of a man that gave me that sort of feeling. And he'll gain a big following internationally and be banned from social media. So there's a lot of discord ahead, sadly. I would hope by now, as civilizations on all sides, we should be able to try to see some form of unity within diversity and understand that all religions have a common heart, a common belief in the universal, omnipresent God. But there's not yet. Longer term in the world, things will change, because these are the last throes of Kali Yuga period, and I do feel that eventually in time there will be a unity of religions and a much more understanding, and that will be the golden age in many respects as it evolves in the world at large. But I hope meanwhile we can develop some tolerance towards one another. But sadly, I see at the moment, I feel conflict ahead with this in 2026. So let's now move on to wars and conflicts, and all of these issues are very interesting, that could be discussed in much more depth. Those of you that are patrons will know that I am planning to have a number of Zoom meetings that we can chat about all of the issues in this program today, and some of them in specifically. And can you see a way out of these struggles? Is there a spiritual path that we could all follow somehow to stop this sort of conflict of such crazy conflict between people that are looking for God? It seems madness that spirituality should ever become a problematic issue. I suppose in many ways, from my personal point of view, I've spoken about these before. One of the things I'd love to see with all this is a separation of politics out of religion, and keep the two separate. Yeah? And that applies to all religions. Why do we have to have politics and religions joined together? It always seems to create a bad mixture there, something explosive. Why can't we separate religion and our search for spirituality as the core of religion, and keep out of trying to control people and nations and laws? Anyway, I'm going off. We've got a lot to get through. So the next one we're going to do is wars and conflicts. I suppose it's been heartening in 2025 when we've seen people at least trying to come together to stop some of the wars that have been happening around the world. And everybody wants to wear the peacemaker badge, don't they? I suppose the first one we ought to come to is Gaza and the Middle East. And I have spoken quite at length on other videos about this, so I don't really want to go into great depth on this, because much of the stuff I've spoken about already is unfolding, and I think will continue to unfold in 2026. The peace will hold, I feel, in Gaza, but there will obviously be still pushbacks from Hamas, who will refuse to disarm. So, but I don't see it blowing up into full-scale warlike things like we've seen already in Gaza, but this still will continue to be a problematic area, of course. I feel as if the rebuilding program, and particularly the rebuilding program that Trump put forward of trying to build luxurious waterside properties, I get the sense that will happen in the north of Gaza, as if it's kind of the area where it's kind of almost linked to Israel. And there will become an area there, perhaps as a dream for the longer term, not necessarily achievable in 2026. But I'm seeing, as the rubble clears, much better buildings coming up, and a lot of investment coming into this. And Trump's been meeting, as I speak now in November 2025, has been speaking to Saudi Arabia a lot, and I think he will get them on board with part of this idea of a giant building program. So it's positive, I feel, for Gaza, but for the Middle East generally, we still haven't seen the end of it. Of course, I don't actually see that we will get a Palestinian state state. And I also feel that the West Bank is going to become an area of major conflict again in 2026, and problems brewing again in places like Lebanon and Yemen and so forth. It's not over yet. There's going to be a second wind to this battle between Israel and some of the Arab nations. So we're not over it yet, but I do feel that the Gaza conflict will be able to keep the lid on this, specifically in Gaza. Now, I also spoke a little bit earlier in the economic predictions and so forth, that I do see that this year, in 2026, there will be a revolution in Iran. This will come because there will be because of economic conditions, first and foremost. And I see that the economic type of collapse, which will be caused there is already a sort of a water shortage in Iran. And I feel that this will be partly caused by problems with water, with food, with the economy generally, and a certain amount of dislike of the regime that's already growing there. And I feel something's going to trigger it. Something's going to push it, and it will flare up, just like it unexpectedly happened in Syria. And Khomeini will be gone by 2027. And also there, the last of the line of the Shahs, as it were, the king, Reza Pahlavi, have I got it right? Yeah, Reza Pahlavi, his name is. Sorry, apologies. I feel he will return. I've spoken about this before, but I feel he will return not as an active political figure, but almost as like a symbolic. We see his car driving through the streets of Iran, a most surreal thing to envision now, and I see the people cheering, and I felt that Iran would have a new flag. If you look at my other predictions, I've spoken about this some while ago, and I've spoken about how this will all unfold. I feel it's going to happen now. It feels like 2026 is the time that this would happen. And I also see the rise of two people in Iran who will become very powerful figures, new people that we don't know of yet, I feel. Certainly the general public don't yet. I see a young man coming to political power there, and also in conjunction with an older woman as a leaders. Now, it might be some family connection or something, but there's something where I see as if a woman's face is put into the stage here. She looked older to me. It's difficult to tell, but I feel that it will be a strong female influence in the new Iran. Again, almost symbolic, as this is completely a change from the old. Keeping with the Middle East, I also want to talk briefly about Syria, because I see Syria rebuilding. I see a sort of, a bit like I said with Gaza, but similar sort of thing happening there, with a coastal resort being built in Syria. It felt to me a bit like, I've been to Morocco. I have not actually not been to Agadir, but I remember at the time, going back years and years ago, they had a section that was sectioned off called Agadir, it was literally had a fence around it. I saw it from the other side of the fence when I was there, but it was sort of like they partitioned it off. And I get a feeling there's an enclave made there, as it were, first of all, which is kind of just a resort for tourists and things, and the beginning of the possibility of tourism in, of all places, Syria. I mean, it's got some fantastic archaeological sites still remaining, although many of those were destroyed. But there's still tons there, as one of the birthplaces of modern civilization. And when I was looking into this, I kept seeing a symbol of a phoenix, and I thought, oh, why a phoenix? I said a logo or something like that. And I thought, why am I seeing phoenixes all the time? Well, obviously it's a symbol of rebirth. Is this something special? And then the penny hadn't dropped with me, but it's Phoenician, which is what's the old area of Syria, is Phoenix, Phoenician. So I thought, oh, well, why am I being given that? And I get the sense it's going to be called something like that, the Phoenician Project. Something like that, symbolizing the rebirth of the nation. And it will come in stages, and it will come with a lot of foreign money helping with this. I mean, Syria doesn't have much in the way of oil, but it does have much in the way of other resources, which could be cultural. And I feel this will be a similar sort of project, perhaps an umbrella project to rebuild the ailing countries of the Arab nations. So possibly with political help, just in the same way, and financial help, such as we see with Gaza. And maybe this could be an extension of the Abrahamic Accords. I just feel that Syria could become quite a rebuilt nation, a nation of hope, after some terrible periods of discord there as well. And even more tolerance eventually coming towards the Kurds, who will eventually one day, I've often said this, I feel one day the Kurds would have their own nation, which is still very contentious and might be still a problem in 2026 still, but much longer term, I see that happening for them. Now, the Ukraine-Russian war, I feel, will gradually come to an end in 2026. I get the feeling that we're coming to the end of this now. I know it's been an intractable war that seems to just grind on and on. And I did say, do you remember my first predictions when we went right back and we talked about what would happen with Russia and that? And I saw it happening before the war broke, and then it did break. I saw that happening, and then I said it would be a long, grueling war, and it was. But I feel that there will be some constructive meetings now between Putin and Trump, and I feel a gradual rebuilding of this. Russia will keep some land, and this will be much to the dislike of the Ukrainians. But in any good deal, any good mediation, both sides will usually go away unhappy, and it has to be this way because Russia, and Putin in particular, has to keep his kudos with the people in Russia, because again, I feel there's a lot of moves in Russia to try to remove him gradually. There's a lot of discontent with Putin. It all looks rosy and dandy, and here's the great leader. But I feel there's some problems brewing there in Russia, and he needs to make a deal soon, because the longer this goes on, he can't win because resources are running out. I feel we will be clamping down on Russian oil, and that way it will put some pressure on Russia. And when the money runs out, often the power goes with it. So I think Putin's going to stay there for the time being, but his position is very much under threat. So he needs to do a deal, and that means keeping some of the land. And right at the very beginning of the predictions I made when the war first started, I can't even remember when that began now. That would have been about 2021, I must have been saying this, if you want to look up my predictions from then. Russia, I said, will keep a land corridor from the Crimea up to Russia. So that now looks like it could be the case. And I'm seeing also a big destruction of a Russian armaments factory, not just the oil going up, because oil, they keep hitting the oil, but I feel a big armament factory right within Russia itself being attacked and destroyed by a clandestine Ukrainian attack. And it will be found that some Chinese weaponry has been involved. I just saw Chinese writing on bombs. Now, I can't see the Chinese giving Ukrainians bombs, of course not. But does that mean that Russia is stocking Chinese weaponry, which might even show a weakness from the Russian side of their own manufacturing? And there's a fallout, you see, I feel also between Russia and China coming up as well. I saw kind of this in a strange sort of way, but I won't go into details of how I saw it. But from what I can feel about what my kind of unconscious is showing me, because clairvoyance sometimes comes through the unconscious, like it comes through dreams, and it becomes in unformed forms sometimes. I mean, you that follow the program regularly will sometimes see when I talk about some of the emerging things that I'm feeling that I can't quite understand. But I do feel there's a conflict between Russia and China, not a military conflict, but a conflict over weapons, markets, and particularly over their influence in India. There's something about India involved here, where maybe India is going to change its attitude to buying Russian armaments, or there's some conflict between there's a conflict of interest, and I'm not quite sure what it is. There's a conflict of interest between China and Russia, which means there's a falling out, which means perhaps there's an ending of Chinese support. And both Xi Jinping and Putin, I feel, have both got declining health, which will be seen in 2026. It will be noticed. I want to talk about that a little bit later on. I mention it a little bit later on when I'm going to do some predictions on China a little bit further along the line when we talk about the political changes. So those are going to be important factors. We know they've got declining health. They're getting older. But it could be a serious factor, particularly from Xi Jinping's point of view. Okay, other things. There's a lot going on in the world at the moment. Oh my God, going through all this, there's so much. I want to come to Venezuela, because I feel Venezuela's government will fall. That means Maduro, if I pronounce his name correctly, is out. In fact, I feel he is taken out, because I saw another one of these assassinations attacks, and it's not. People will say, "Oh, it's America doing this," but I get the feeling the cartels are somehow tied into this. It's like we got to get rid of him. We've got to put someone new in, or something's happened. They're certainly blamed, and there's a lot of drug type of stuff behind this, I feel. And there will be a new government in Venezuela. And although the people won't like this idea at first, because they feel that it's been hoisted upon them by foreign people, and there might be a lot of reaction against this, but there will be American money pouring into Venezuela, particularly for the development of the oil fields. But you remember I said the country will have a problematic period where the oil completely dries up. So there's a major economic crash for them initially, but I feel that they're going to be pulled back out of this. It's not a particularly happy deal, but it does work out for the long run because they need their oil. But will that oil go to the normal people? Will it go to the common people? No, it's been in some way stolen. But they will also be pulled out of poverty here eventually, not in 2026, but that will be important. There will be a lot of resistance from many ordinary Venezuelans, I feel, who feel their country is being pillaged. But I do feel he goes. It doesn't, I don't think this is going to come from an invasion. I know there's American aircraft carriers out there, but I get the sense there's something else brewing, right? It feels like Maduro goes. I feel he's been popped off, and that kind of helps to solve the problems of Venezuela. But I also feel with this that something new is happening, and there's something that we've not been aware of, because sometimes when I look at these things, I see it like a map, and I saw a map. On my map, I saw Cuba, and I thought, Kennedy, Cuba crisis. Why am I seeing all this? Cuba's settled. But then I sense that something bad's going to happen regarding Cuba, and it feels like something triggers a complete change of their governments and everything. And could it be an energy crisis? They rely on oil from Venezuela. And I feel that there's going to be a lot of social problems caused in Cuba with the fall of Venezuela. It's a ricochet effect. And the reason, and I was saying, well, why am I seeing this? And I got the feeling that it was all this sort of like a hidden attempt to overthrow a government. By attacking Venezuela, we also bring down Cuba. And I feel that it's being done. There's a lot of subterfuge going on. There's all the Secret Service in there, and I feel that it's a counteraction. There's a secret war going on because I feel China's also got its influences there. And I saw a Chinese sort of base being revealed, and whether it's an actual base or what it is, it seemed like a secret facility, and that I think is in Cuba. Something was connected with that, and I see problems occur because China are seen as interfering in the area by supplying oil to Cuba. They tried to sort of support Cuba. It's as if China's doing the thing that Russia did in the past. So I see this as a big thing. And I see Trump claiming it as another badge of honor, as making his place in history as a peacemaker when he goes in to try to sort all this out. And I feel that a conflict that's been there since 1961 is now sorted. That's what we'd be saying. So I saw this. So it suggests to me that whatever happens in Cuba will get sorted. So it feels like it gets sorted quite quickly. And I feel Cuba opening up for much more American money. And I'm seeing things like, casinos opening and things like that. Not good things, but I'm seeing like that type of American money going in there as turning it into a resort again. Right. And I also had another, I got another one on my mind, actually. I can't talk about it. But I also saw another unusual sort of visionary sort of thing, because I saw a public building that had a very Roman style of architecture, and it had an eagle-like structure on the front. It reminded me of the sort of things that they would have built in Nazi Germany, but it wasn't that. But it had then the kind of eagle sort of frontage on it, and I saw it being hit from the air. Now there was something unusual about this, because it was a fiery streak with the thing that hit it, which made me think, well, this isn't a missile. And behind it, a tall chimney collapsed at the same time and also tumbled down. Now those sort of things are happening all the time in places like Ukraine and so forth. And there was a German feel to it, like I said. But I wondered, could this be not a missile, but a meteor? And not a huge meteor, not some world-destroying meteor, but I felt as if a meteor had fallen to Earth and hit somewhere in a city. And because I saw it like a typical city centre building like that, and it looked like a public building, if you see what I mean, because Roman-style architecture is often a public building. But it had that sort of German, Russian, Germanic type of brutalism type of Roman sort of filter, because it's got a dark-looking building. But anyway, will a meteor, a small meteor, hit a public building of some sort? Nothing world-destroying, but certainly a building-destroying thing. So let's see what happens there. Okay, those are some of the conflicts. I'm sure there's more. And again, we've also 2026. Could it be? Could China also have its problems with Taiwan again? I'm going to talk about China in a moment, and I've also spoken about those type of things in great length before. Timing is often the difficult thing with this type of work as a medium, because we can quite often see the events and they play out exactly as you say. Like I just had an email from someone saying, "Oh, look, I've just been re-looking at your Epstein predictions, and they're all unfolding exactly as you said," and so on. But timing is often very difficult. Anyway, those are some of the feelings I have for wars and conflicts in 2026. And you'll note with a large number of them, there is a resolution. So it could be a time when we're starting to clear up some of the world's problems and starting gradually to work towards a greater peace in the world. Okay, let's move on to political changes now. And we're going to deal first of all with the United Kingdom, because that's where I'm based. I'm a British psychic. So yeah, here in the UK, we're going to be seeing a complete meltdown of our economy for a while. And this will create some issues and some problems that are going to make it even worse for the Starmer government. And he will go. And I feel he'll go very, very quickly. Either straight into 2026 or even maybe before, because I feel he's very, very unpopular. And it don't really take a psychic to tell you that he's going to go, because frankly, he's been teetering on the edge all the way through 2025. I felt he had 100 days some time ago, and I've gone past that. So I got it a little bit wrong with some of it. But timing with these things is always so difficult anyway. But hopefully I see the right sort of things happening with this, because I feel that they'll push him out. He'll try not to go. So it'll cause a lot of chaos within the Labour government. And the contenders, I feel, strangely enough, is going to be Ed Miliband, David Lammy, and Claire Rayner, because I feel that they won't have the courage to push Shabana Mahmood to become PM, because everybody will shift from Labour to the Greens, and they'll be just too terrified to allow her to be PM. And I feel that it's going to be this contention between left and right within a split Labour Party, terrified of losing to Reform, but also equally terrified of losing all their more leftist voters to the Greens. So how will it work out? Well, first of all, I feel that Yvette Cooper will come in to become like a caretaker Prime Minister for a while. But the end result, it will be such a split that if things really got so bad, David Lammy could even become PM. But my feelings are ultimately that I don't think the nation's going to accept Claire Rayner. She's too she's too unpopular, I feel. And perhaps the least unpopular of them all would be Ed Miliband, who might retain those people running away to the Greens, but would have a hopeless case against Reform. So they're really stuck. So it's difficult for me to predict this one, to be quite honest, because my head is already filled with too many ideas about this person and that person. And I think my own thoughts are getting involved in here. So I haven't seen this in the same level of clairvoyance like I might see other things. If I was push come to shove and I said who would finally get in there, my feelings now I think would be Ed Miliband, although I have said other things before. So I'm a bit of a stumped with this one, to be honest. I have to be honest with it. But there definitely will be an ending of the Labour government. And I do feel that next year, although, you know, they're still here for quite a long time, the Labour government, in terms of the statute books of whether they can or cannot stay. But I think there will be so much public dislike of the Labour government, and with a new Labour leader coming in, that they will be forced to have to call a general election, because they'll have no authority, because although they might have the seats, they haven't got the public with them. So they will have to stand for re-election. And I feel a general election will be called in 2026. And even though they feel that they're making great strides on the public anger about migration and so forth, but I don't think they'll be able to sort themselves out in time. People won't believe them, just as they won't believe the Tories anymore. I mean, people have got quite long memories with this, strangely enough. Normally in politics, they say a week is a long time in politics. But I think people have been so deeply disillusioned by the politics in the UK that we will see a general election in 2026. I think it will be quite later in 2026. And Reform will win that election. They will win it narrowly, but they may need to have the Tories with them to get full government. So it will be, but they will win it, but it will be a difficult battle, not as clear as it looks in the polls at the moment. Others will defect to Reform too. I see Liz Truss joining Reform. I see Suella Braverman even jumping ship and joining Reform. And much, much later, I see Jacob Rees-Mogg even joining Reform. In fact, I saw him as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Now, lots more I could talk about with that. I have put other videos up about it, so go and have a look at some of those as well. And like I say, I'll be taking questions from you in the members only coffees with Craig, so I'm going to be doing coming up to the new year, and in the Zoom meetings on the patrons. But we'll move on now to the United States. What do I see for the political changes there? Well, one was I saw the end of Joe Biden, because I feel Joe Biden hasn't got a lot of time with us. And I don't like to predict deaths, but unfortunately that's part of my job, as if I'm going to be doing clairvoyance for this, and the time of a death is in the hands of the divine. But my feeling is that I felt that he's going to go, and that will become, whatever you feel about him, it's always sad to see someone go. But there is this issues in the USA. I feel is going to be the main problems. There are going to be around this rising socialism that started in USA. I think it was Reagan said socialism always comes with a smile, and you had quite a cheery sort of young-looking person coming to the fore there. But I feel these are dangerous movements happening in America. Like I said, woke is in fact American Marxism, I'd call it. I feel that coming up into the votes that are going to be coming up in the future, I feel that the Republican Party will retain control of the Senate, but they're going to lose the House in 2026. So that's going to make it a little bit harder to be able to just sign through so much legislation as Trump has done up to now. So this will be problematic if they lose the if they lose the House, because I feel that will happen. It will be quite slim majorities, but I feel this will happen. I feel Musk is actually going to reunite again with Trump. I said before that Musk and Trump would fall out and come back together again, and there were signs of this happening in a sort of a mild way. But I feel there's going to be a new partnership between them that's going to revitalize a lot of the American economy again. Some big deals being planned, huge deals that involve whole countries, trillions of dollars being deals being made, particularly with the Saudi America, the Saudis and America. Those sort of things are going to be huge in what's happening in American politics and the way it goes forward. So, so that I think that's going to be one of the major things. I see Trump is going to be doing all sorts of things in the future with America that I think is going to be some quite scandalous type of stuff. I quickly mentioned the Epstein scandal because I have spoken in length about that, and someone wrote to me and said, it's all coming exactly as you said in your earlier videos, Craig. So I have spoken about that for quite a lot on other videos, but I don't think this is going to bring down Trump, for example, because I think this has been these are his involvement is not as much as some people would like to see. I do feel that some spiritual leaders are going to be involved in this, possibly some Arab influences in there as well, and this is why I feel perhaps Trump has been a bit reluctant to let people have a go at the recent Arab visit to Washington. So my feelings are that there's going to be quite a lot there. We've had mainly British people take the can for what happened there with Prince Andrew. I think he will still be called to testify. He will speak. He will be forced to speak. But we're going to see lots of influences from things that happened with Russia and the Clintons, and is Meghan Markle in there? It's going to be a huge scandals coming out of this, which is in the pipeline right as we speak now. But it won't, I feel, bring the Republicans into a crisis situation. I think things are covered there. So for America, there's so much more. I'm going to have to obviously do a lot more in future videos, because the way Trump takes things in the future, I'm going to sort of mention as we move forward in some of the other countries, because he's been working very much internationally on the world stage. But I do see him beginning to come back to the American stage a bit more and helping to build the American economy at home. But we'll mention some more of that as we move through this video, and I'll bring some other things up. So those are some of the main things. I think the main thing is losing the House. I think that's the big one that's going to make a lot of difference, and his ability to change things with the judges and so forth. I mentioned Canada again. I've always said quite a bit about Canada already, more than I would normally say, but I also see, like I said, I saw a lot of major protests there. I saw a backlash also against Carney there. Whether Carney would go, I'm not sure. I feel he's really, really going to be on shaky ground. He's a person that really digs his heels in. So I see him staying in power through most of 2026. But I really do feel there's going to be a real serious challenge to his authority around September, which might even see him pushed out and a change in Canadian politics as Carney begins to sort of show his inability to deal with the many problems, to put his money where his mouth is. And I feel that there's going to be a lot of problems in Canada too, because Canada will be in a difficult economic position where it actually has to scramble to replace many lost exports after what I see is the collapse of the USMCA. So that's all going to be a problem area for Canada. So some shaky economic times ahead for Canada. It's going to have, obviously, its influence on the politics. It's a big world. So I'm going to move on to China a bit more in detail here. So, as I said before, I think 2026 marks the beginning of the end for the Chinese Communist Party. I've spoken at length in other videos about what I feel would unfold in China, and it takes a long time for these things to happen. Sometimes they don't always happen in a year, but we'll see a lot of internal fractures and regional divergences happening in China. I see long-term transitions towards what I've spoke about before of a confederate of regional democracies that would eventually happen in China, inspired by Sun Yat-sen, I've spoken about in his 3 principles. Now, that's a long way ahead, but I feel we'll start to see those things that I've mentioned about in other videos before a number of times. And a worldwide Chinese influence network will also be uncovered. Actually, we've had some of it here in the UK, and I wrote this before this started to sort of appear. But we're going to start seeing much more revelations of international bribery of governments everywhere, espionage on an absolutely massive scale that people have massively underestimated. And we're going to see how it's been working within universities, and this will be exposed, and how the woke agenda and these things have been fueled by some Chinese money and Russian money to bring the downfall of the West. I don't feel that Xi Jinping will be with us for very long. I feel 2027 he may be gone by, actually. I don't feel his health is very good either. But certainly his decline, both in political influence and his health, will become much more apparent in 2026. And I actually see him. When I tried to tune into him, I saw him having a big operation, and it looked to me like it was a giant transplant of some kind. I feel, and there's controversy over that. I felt a strange feeling. Is this something where, he's made to order transplants from somebody that might have been a criminal executed or something like that? I feel there's a bit of a controversy of some sort with a transplant. And it may be there's something he has done, kidneys or something like that, that was taken from a source that is a very suspect. Certainly I feel that's propaganda about that out there, perhaps. Maybe it's just Twitter filled or something, but I see this all coming up in 2026 as an issue of some sort. And I feel a very senior official, possibly military or security based, will suddenly disappear. Someone high up is suddenly being pulled off the world stage, and we don't know what happens to him. He dies under strange circumstances. And the official story will be very vague, with rumors will swirl about an internal coup attempt in China. Also, China has this thing called the Mandate of Heaven, a sort of mythological ties with the leader's legitimacy to the avoidance of disaster. And I feel that in China, they will have some shocking incident of some sort. I feel as if it's like something, it's some big thing where lots of people are hurt. It might be a giant rail disaster or collapse of railway lines or rails and people being hurt. It may have something or even to do with the Three Gorges Dam. Something structural of some sort has a major problem that is reflected on this is shoddy Chinese workmanship, and it kind of reflects a difficult time for Xi Jinping, and it's kind of seen by people as a symbolic fall from power of some sort. The Chinese are quite superstitious, and I feel this is sort of happening in 2026. And I also feel we all think China's booming with the tech industry, but I get a sense that they lose some major part of the tech sector. They lose some dominance. Maybe it's chip manufacturing or something like that I see here, but I feel as if they fall behind. I mean, we saw them make great leaps ahead with AI, for example, but I get the feeling something's going wrong with that. Their tech industry falters. And this will be quite important for the deals that America does with China. It's like the tariffs start to bite in 2026 and they start to affect the Chinese economy. And they've got lots of things there that could be very dodgy, such as the housing markets and things like that, that could give quite a slide in the Chinese economy. This would affect the West, of course, as well. But that's where I'm feeling that things are moving very slow. It's a slow glacial breakdown, but I feel that China's dropping from its heights of power, and it may be difficult for capitalism to thrive as well as it has under a communist regime when the money starts to run out. It's all good when things are going well, but as always with most politics, things start getting dodgy when people start getting hungry or they start noticing there's no money in their pockets. Now, Australia, strangely enough, I feel does kind of escape a lot of the financial problems that I've spoken about for 2026. They're going to strengthen their ties very much with the USA. This is something that's going to be quite an important deal. Presumably, it's something like rare earths that I'm seeing here, because I saw mining and things like this and manufacturing of these things, or processing. So could Australia be about to develop its own rare earth processing, stick it right in the middle of the outback where any pollution could be kept under control, because it's a messy business, rare earth manufacturing. That's why China does it, and everybody turns their back on the pollution issues. But I feel there's going to be it's going to be quite important. They're going to do a number of good deals, particularly with the USA, strangely enough, where the American money coming in there. I also feel that there's going to be an unexpected surge in refugees, a surge from Asia into Australia. So when I see that, it gives me the feeling perhaps there's some unexpected problem on its doorstep, maybe with Indonesia. And I feel many parts of the world will have a water crisis in 2026. And Australia, I feel, has these problems too. There's going to be a lot of water problems around the world. Iran, there's already a bit of a water problem, but I see it getting dead serious with dams and wells drying up, and other parts of Africa, there would be a water crisis, so is South Africa and so forth. But then in the Far East, they got too much. I feel monsoon problems. It's like it's all in one place. But other parts of the world, including Europe, are struggling with their water. But I see that they got those problems in Australia too. But one of the important things, and this was something I saw seemed very positive for Australia. I saw Australia emerging as a really serious contender in the world of space power, and I see government there helping to increase their the funding for these things. And I saw an Australian project done with Musk, in which we get a new form of horizontal landing spaceship. It comes down like that, rather than come down like that and hook onto things. And it seems to be tested in Australia. So I feel there's something going on there with a big deal being done, possibly with American money coming through Musk or something like that. But there's going to be quite an important step forward with that. I'll mention some more things about that in my technological stuff that I'm going to mention as we go along. But Australia's going to have quite an important role in that. And I feel Australia will actually avoid recession while the West struggles. And a lot of this is because of a rare earth boom, a new space industry, and also some big deals done with India. I feel as if they go in a big deal with India. And while I'm on the topic of Australia, I also we've all been intrigued by this 3-eye atlas. I say atlas, ATLAS they call it, but the 3-eye atlas strange phenomena that was seen. I was feeling that something is spotted from an Australian observatory. So presumably in that part of the galaxy that we look from Australia to, where the stars are different in the sky. So it might indicate where it's going to be. And I feel there was something like a new exoplanet with very strange properties. It felt far away. It didn't feel like it was in our solar system, but it's like they pick up something like a signal there of some sort. And it will raise questions about whether there's alien life, similar to those posed by the 3-eye atlas phenomena that we were seeing with that strange whatever it is entering our solar system. This seems to be far off in space though, and I feel as if it's spotted from Australia. So other parts of the world, this is what I say, this is such a long video, it's very difficult to go into great detail with everything for everybody. I saw problems in France. I feel there's going to be a government collapse in France, and Macron goes. That will be one thing we'll see. There's also a direct confrontation, I feel, between the Philippines and China. Now, this won't be a full-on war or anything like that, but I feel shots are fired, and it doesn't escalate into full-on war, but I see serious issues there between Philippines and China. Battles again over who owns what in the seas. There will be, in Kim Jong-un, I feel health problems around him as well, causing possible instability, and there may be moves there to try to replace him. It's like I've seen a lot of clandestine sort of undercurrents, secret moves to try to remove people from power, because I said it with Xi Jinping, I said it with Putin, and I also feel the very similar feeling with Kim Jong-un. There's a bit of a crisis also in South Africa regarding the ANC, because I feel the ANC will fracture. Because there's going to be energy problems in South Africa. I feel energy grid collapses. I'm seeing blackouts. I'm seeing problems with keeping the power going. And this creates a lot of political issues. And the ANC are blamed on this, I feel. They also see in Turkey political turmoil. Because, again, Erdogan's health, I feel, is also an issue. There's a lot of leaders that are ready, that are ready to fall, I feel. And I feel health issues are going to be one of the main ones in 26. But there's going to be, I sensed a big earthquake in Turkey, because I'll talk about earth and environmental things in a minute. But I feel there's a big earthquake in Turkey that causes a great deal of disruption to the infrastructure, and also damages a lot of Turkey's finances, particularly through people not wanting to go there because of holidays and things like this. So I feel there's a disruption. I wouldn't say to people don't book holidays in Turkey, because I feel most people would be safe, because it feels like it's away from the holiday resorts. But it does feel as if there's been something that causes an infrastructure structural damage and some political unrest caused as a result of this. In Europe too, I see revolts in Europe over the farmers. I see some food shortages in Europe. So I feel disruption to the farming industry, also to the UK as well. And these will be places like Holland, but spreading also to France and Germany and Italy. And I feel some difficulties with the harvests again, and some problems with farmers getting angry about their rights. We get it here in the UK as well. So it's different sort of issues here in the UK to what's going on in Europe. But I feel farmers beginning to get angry. I'm also seeing farmers parking their tractors outside Downing Street and causing disruption in the city centre of London. Also, there's been a lot of youth uprising around the world as well, universities particularly. And I feel a sort of a new Generation Z sort of movement coming in the USA in particular. And this will also spread into Europe as well. It's a kind of like a youth movement that is fighting against the fact that they feel that they're being cheated out of their degrees, particularly over AI and the fact that people can't get jobs once they've been through university. And there's going to be some new rules imposed on universities, which I feel, particularly in America, the students don't like. So there's going to be a lot of student uprising and student anger, both about being their careers being disrupted and turned upside down, and the government not helping, and no guarantees that taking a degree will get you a job. So there's going to be a lot of disruption with that, which is going to become kind of unified as a youth movement, a bit like we had Black Lives Matter and we had Me Too movement. I see a youth movement of some sort. I'm not quite sure of its form yet, but it's like we're all getting together because we're all upset that the youth is being overlooked. And just while I'm still kind of with more international things, I didn't know quite the way to put this in my predictions, but I saw some missing parts. You remember the Malaysian Airlines flight 370, MH370 it was, wasn't it? I feel they're going to find some parts of that in 2026, which will surface in Thailand. So that will start raising some more interesting questions about where that aeroplane went down, because I see something being washed up in Thailand, or something being washed up in Thailand. Okay, so again, we can discuss all those with the patrons, and if you want to become a patron, do have a look in the description below, where you can become a patron, or there's a little button also if you want to become a YouTube member. It does help this channel to keep going. You imagine how much time it takes out of a person's day to make these videos, and although we get some revenue from the adverts that come in, we YouTubers need patron support. So if you want to support the channel, do have a look in the description below. Right, going to move on now to environmental and earth changes. So these are some of my predictions about environment and earth changes in particular. I did mention that I feel there'd be a big earthquake in Turkey. This could also affect parts of Iran as well, because I feel that there's a lot of shifts going on around the world at the moment. I feel as if there's also problems in the Himalayas, and we might get something in northern India as well with this, because I feel there's a big shake going to happen there that may disrupt. I saw water being disrupted and streams being disrupted, maybe even the Ganges disrupted from an earthquake in the north. Caribbean always gets a lot of storms, but I feel as if a particularly large mega storm comes in during the storm seasons off America, and there's an extra large big one on the east coast of the USA that seems to go further north than was expected. It feels to go right up the coastline and goes quite high up, reaching quite well up towards, you can still feel it in New York where it's been so powerful. So there's like I say, there's also the earthquake in Turkey, which is the other major one that I see for this year. I also saw a damage to a nuclear facility. I saw a toxic spill of some sort. Now, I don't know if it's nuclear or whether it's some chemical type thing. And it felt to me this was something that happened in France. That's where I feel I can see it. I felt like a Frenchy sort of feel to it. I sat there drinking wine, watching it all. But I feel as if it was something happened. There was something toxic with a spill of some sort. Whether that's from a nuclear or whether it's from a chemical thing. I felt this is in Europe, but I think it's France that I'm seeing it. It feels like that. And as I've said, one of the major problems with environmental things this year is going to be water scarcity. And I see this both in the American Southwest, I see it in Southern Europe, and I feel and also I mentioned about it in my Australia part a minute ago, and I see this very dry weather will also affect Iran, and there will be some serious problems with finding drinking water, particularly in the Middle East. You imagine what it would be like in places like Gaza, but also I felt Iran, and I felt everything's dried up. We've got and yet Europe's baking, and America's got water issues as well, and yet the Far East I feel is flooding. So I'm seeing flooding in China, and a monsoon issue that is problematic as well, and a movement of the monsoon as if it comes in the wrong place, it comes in the wrong direction, it goes askew somehow. It doesn't follow its normal trajectory, and this causes flooding issues. So we got sort of extremes on both sides with this, and like I say, I feel a few serious worries with some of the earthquakes that may come up, and I also felt as if there was also. I mean, Iceland's another country that has a lot of volcanic activity. It always does. It's a volcanic island, but I felt as if there's some problems with gas in Iceland. I felt like I was choking a bit with the volcanic fumes. So these are things obviously people have to be careful of all the time in Iceland. I don't see it wiping out Reykjavik or anything, but I feel as if there's an issue where maybe a cloud that has gone across from Iceland and might disrupt, as it once did in the past, disrupt aircraft and things like this. So those are my thoughts for some of the environment and earth changes. Let's move on now to give you a few. It's been a long video, so I'll keep them shorter now. And let's have a shot at some of the stuff that I feel are going to happen with technology and medicine in the future too. Well, I usually write all my predictions down. I've got some stuff in front of me on the screen here as I talk to you with these, and when I'm talking, I often go off, and if something comes to me as I'm talking to you, I say it. So it's often different to what I've written down, which makes it complicated when I come back to check it all later. But I had a very strange dream last night that I'd like to share with you, because I saw a new sort of building, and I don't know where this is going to be constructed, but I saw a building that was like a big sphere. And it was such a vivid dream that I want to share it with you. It was like a big sphere building. It seemed to be golden and silver and quite beautiful to look at in many ways. And there was something about this that was very hopeful, that could help the environment and help mankind. Now, this is probably symbolic, but could it be that there's going to be, and also it seemed to think, so afterwards I thought, oh, it's like a symbolic, but is this AI, is symbolic of AI as well? But it seemed to think, and it seemed to be helping the environment, because I saw this as this vision, as it were, as a beautiful sphere amongst a jungle-like setting, because I was walking through palm trees, and it was like I was in a really beautiful tropical environment. Reminded me a lot of when I went to the Seychelles, for example, which was a beautiful place and beautiful feeling. So there's this idea of a beautiful environment with this great sphere in the middle of it. And I've spoken before in the past about that we will develop a new form of energy, a new form of finding energy. Now, whether this comes, when you see the sphere, it often reminds you of a nuclear power station in some ways, but this was a beautiful sort of thing. And so it gave me the feeling that, is this symbolic that science is going to make a big breakthrough? And like I said, it felt intelligent, using possibly nuclear or something like that, but also using artificial intelligence. Could it be that we crack something where we can get energy from something? I was in an environment surrounded by lakes and things and water. So is this symbolic that it maybe comes from something we do with water? Is there some magical property, almost not very scientific, is there some sort of magical property to water that we're going to find some way of getting energy from or using energy? And artificial intelligence cracks it, and we start to build a facility that can change the future of the world. Because if we had unlimited energy, you imagine all these things that I've been talking about of, droughts, for example. We could desalinate the seas, and we could green Australia and green Sahara. And I had a vision of this years and years ago. And I saw this as a real utopian type of way that we will change the material world around us. The great happiness in the world will come when we get the great spiritual revolution in the world that will come to us. Not the sort of one I've been talking about with this division that I see between Islam and Christianity that coming up that I spoke about. This will be when everybody starts to sort of realize the unity of all of us consciousnesses, that we're one consciousness that manifests in many different ways. But this is something that I felt was physical. And so could it be that this is the year that we begin to crack the idea that there could be a new form of energy, a new form of making energy that has something to do with water? And is there something planned? Is there some plan ahead to build something like this? Or will we see it in the news? And it seemed a bit science fiction to me, but often these things come in the strangest of ways. And often it's the craziest things, I say to you, that are often the most interesting when they actually do happen. I obviously see through a mirror darkly, I say. I don't see everything clearly, or see through a glass darkly. It depends how you interpret the biblical translation. But it's like through a mirror. You can't see. They used to use onyx as a mirror, so it was like dark. You couldn't see it all. And I think clairvoyance is a bit like that. I try to interpret the things I've been telling you today based upon visions that I've had, and I try to think, extrapolate from that something that is about the world. Is that what I'm seeing? But I saw this, and it gives me a sense of hope for the future. And I feel this is something that's on this planet, not on Mars or anywhere else, but it had a very science fiction sort of feel to it. So I think there's a lot of room for hope for the longer term here. Perhaps my unconscious mind, knowing that I was going to make this video today, was saying, look, don't forget the long term, Craig. There's going to be this long term thing, this scientific breakthrough, that when we have this, we can not only fuel AI, because we need energy more than ever. And energy, as we know, can create environmental and pollution problems, but we need a clean form of unlimited energy. And it was like my unconscious mind was saying, look, Craig, there it is. Here's a vision. This will come, and technology is going to help you with this, and it's going to help the environment, because there was all this jungle around me, and this idyllic type of jungle like I saw in places like the Seychelles and places like that on my travels. So there's a lovely feeling with that. So it was nice to have that feeling, and kind of part as we're going through these, to remind ourselves that the good things are ahead for the world ultimately, both materially and technologically, as well as spiritual, which I've spoken about many times. But going on, I also saw this development of space technology where Australia seems to be involved somehow with a horizontal rocket landing. And I see that happening. And I felt it's being done in Australia. It's probably going to be SpaceX that's doing that, the way Musk's gone forward. But I saw this anyway, and it felt like I wanted to share that with you, because I saw that in quite a strong images and pictures when I did these predictions, which have been done over quite a few weeks, actually, because I've been meditating each day and seeing what comes to me. And I also saw something where there's like another space technology where there's two rockets that work together, almost like you get a catamaran, and you get two to make a boat. I felt two rockets connected together. So is this the same thing that I'm talking about, or is this something different? But it's like two rockets that work together or are actually physically connected like a catamaran. It felt like a catamaran in the sky. So is there something like that we're going to see with a new breakthrough and a new idea thrown upon us? It could be, perhaps it's already in development and we don't know it, but these things will be kept very secret, I'm sure. So I see quite a lot going on with that, and new breakthroughs with that. And I'm also keeping with that theme a little bit, because Elon Musk, who fascinates me as a person, because I think he's an interesting man, but I'm seeing him branching into film and movie making, because, as I will mention in a moment, I see major collapse of a Hollywood studio of some sort, and Musk stepping in and doing filmmaking, and changing the sort of the mindset of Hollywood, just as he went into Twitter and changed the mindset there, for good or bad, whichever way you believe it. But it changed the mindset, and I feel there's going to be he's going to be stepping into movie making as well as these other fields, vehicles and technology and so forth. And this will be, I'll talk about that in a moment as well. And I also saw obviously there's going to be a lot of medical breakthroughs. I said last year that there'd be a medical breakthrough in cancer, and there has been some very major medical breakthroughs in cancer. We're going to get very close, I feel, in 2026 to once and forever cure for it. And although I don't think it will be completely wiped out, but I feel we're getting very close to really making a breakthrough, particularly with this idea of personalized vaccines, that the cancer is different for everybody, and AI can develop a kind of like a personalized vaccine. Now that is around now, but I did speak about it way before it happened, that I saw vaccines being made for each individual person. And then the advent of AI, of course, made that possible, which at the time of me saying it didn't seem a very possible thing, because it would have been so intense to have done that. But also this year, 2026, I see a breakthrough in anti-aging. So you might see a new Craig, a young one with hair. But I see a breakthrough in anti-aging, a gene editing type of thing or something. It's a shocking type of thing that will shock the medical world, I feel. And it includes a new way to regrow skin, to make a person look youthful. It's not a new health, though. So there'll be controversy about this. Is this vanity or is this real health? Should we really be developing this? But I feel it makes people look good, even though they might not be sort of fully healthy inside. But I spoke about some of these new breakthroughs that are going to come through. But I feel that it's an anti-aging one that we're going to see. And whether it is actually does anybody any real good or not, we'll have to wait and see. It's more like a vanity, a bit like when we had the fat jabs, in which people lose weight. This is something much more for the surface of a person. Okay, going to move on now to the royal family. Okay, this is a really short one now for the royal family stuff, because I've made already a whole video about the royal family, and I'll reference you to that. But I'll leave it just in this video, just because it's an important thing. I see 2026, we will see the death of King Charles, and you'll need to look in the other video for that. And I see many, many changes happening with the royal family because of this. So have a look at my other video for that one. Well, thanks for sticking with me with this. It's been a long video, but we're coming now to sports and entertainment. And I'll make a few predictions about sports and entertainment. Now, I know nothing about sports. I don't really follow sports much at all, actually. So it's probably better, because then I can't have any preconceived ideas about what I think is going to happen with it. Now, I know that there's the FIFA World Cup in 2026. And I sense that, first of all, I know it's being run between a number of countries, and I felt something goes wrong in Mexico with this, something involving a problem with corruption or some disruption of some sort, and it's tied to the drug wars and the cartels and things like that. It's like there's a destructive element that tries to mess things up. It doesn't stop it or anything, but it's just something that will grab the headlines. I feel that the finalists are going to be between Spain, Argentina, and France. And I think I've said it some while ago as well. My feeling, the final will be between Spain and Argentina, and it's going to be tight, but I think Argentina wins. Now, other things on that type of thing, I see the rise of Saudi Arabia as a global sports empire. I feel in 2026, I see them buying a major European club, a really big one. It will be something like, for example, in Spain, Valencia, or maybe in Italy, Inter Milan. I'm seeing major Saudi Arabian money buying a major club, which is going to cause a lot of upset, because it's going to be, we've been bought by big foreign money. But I see something like that happening. Sport has become business nowadays, hasn't it? But that's what I see. And I don't think a lot of people are like the fact that that's happening, but it will. And I see a major Hollywood studio collapse. I started talking about it earlier, because I saw a huge Hollywood studio collapse, and I felt it being bought by a big tech company. Now, that could be Elon Musk, I said. Also, I see Netflix in serious trouble. Its shares will crash. I feel Netflix is going to lose a lot of followers and a lot of popularity. In fact, the whole industry is going to have a major wake-up call. The old idea of go woke, go broke, because they've been making stuff that people don't really want to watch. I mean, I've been an avid theatre goer for the cinema for years and years and years, Jane and I, and every time we go in there now, there's fewer and fewer people watching. That's because they're not making stuff people enjoy, just revamps of everything that's been before. So I see Trump, and I see Musk investing in a movie company. And that really disrupts Hollywood. I feel like he might buy something out. I've spoken about it before, actually, because I see him even trying to buy the rights to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It will be something of that type of quality, which would be their launch movie. But they go into lots of other things, and lots more 70s style movies, where action movies and things like this going on, and movies with better writing involved in it. Because I think a lot of the problem's been, I don't know how you feel, let me know in the comments, but a lot of these problems, I think, with the industry has been bad writing and just copying what's been before. So I see much more innovative, much more attempting to do something that's got a social message to it type of films being made as we move into 2026, not just by Musk, but the industry too. I see a big shake-up. Lots of frights about it, and that Hollywood may be moving to Dubai rather than staying in America. So now something needs to be done about it. Now, Trump, with his whole BBC business, I think he will pursue that for quite a while, but I don't see it going to the bitter end. He'll fight it in Florida, but I feel it would be hard to fight it to the bitter end, and it would be too long a case to continue. I think he will ultimately back off from this and say, well, I respect Britain and I feel I'm not going to do this because it's owned by the British people. But it will cause such a major shock and upset within the BBC. It will start to change the mindset of the BBC, which I'm sure many of us will be very, very glad to see change. Many people are cancelling their license fees. We have to pay an actual license fee. Every person in the UK pays that. And I think there's going to be a shake-up, and the BBC will go on to much more of a pay-to-view type of system where people will be it will be split at first, and I see that there'll be a certain amount that will become regional news and so forth, which will all be paid for, but much more the bigger stuff like the movie making and the costume dramas will become much more a commercial enterprise. That won't happen entirely in 2026, but we'll start to see the beginnings of it. And when we see the Reform government come in here in the UK, I feel that they will really look at the BBC through completely different eyes as being politically polluted, and they'll start to split it first of all in order to make part of it paid for by the public and voluntarily up to a point, and also other parts and its back catalogue being put into a commercial type of BBC with advertising and pay to view. I also, when I was tuning into the idea of what can I see for these type of things, and I saw a fire on a big film set, a real major problem of a film set going up in smoke, and scenes going wrong, and something went wrong, injury to people, crew in trouble, and actually a celebrity harmed by this. And it was just like something had gone wrong, and it all went up in flames, and people were hurt, including a celebrity, which became a major sort of argument over someone being hurt on a set. And I also see a major scandal, and must be scandals of celebrities involved in trafficking. I know we've got the Epstein scandal is out there, and that could be throwing this up soon. But I also feel there's more to come also from the Sean Diddy Coombs case. Epstein is going to fire up some of that as well. It's going to say, well, we've got to reopen this as well, because there's so much more being cited here. But I see something with that, a scandal with a major celebrity and possibly celebrities involved in trafficking. And finally, just one last one. I see a stadium disaster or a crowd incident in somewhere that was extremely unexpected. I feel something where you would think this was totally safe. It's a mum's out sort of place. I saw children around it as well. But there's a disaster or of some crowd incident that happened in a place least expected. And that's all I can say with it. It seemed somewhere totally unusual, and that's why it will make the headlines, because this is a sort of thing you wouldn't expect that sort of thing to happen. Thank you for staying with me. It's been a long haul. There's lots I could say about the way forward. I think the videos I'm going to start making a little bit after this for a while are going to be some with a bit more of a spiritual view to them, because when you look at the whole world situation, it always looks so miserable and frightening and horrible, doesn't it? Because any year that you were to predict for any year in human history, it always has a pretty gloomy sort of stuff when you lay it out bare like this. And often when you look back at a year and people look at what happened in the year, you think, my God, that was a bad year. No wonder when we get to the turn of the new year, we always feel celebratory, because we think it's got to be better than what's been before. So please don't feel gloomy about some of the things that I've been saying here, because most of the stuff doesn't usually affect a person directly. Some are hurt, some are harmed, but most of us watching this will probably not be harmed by what we've seen. And I think it's important in the world not to ever really be fearful. I think it's very important in life that we as humans try to always approach the life with this, what I call fearlessness. Because why go into the future with fear? Most fear is just resistance. We have to accept things as they are. Accept things as they are, and things don't hurt you. Even when you get pain, just observe it and see it as just sensation. It's what it is. And happiness and what we haven't got. You know, we might think, well, just observe it, what it is. Just accept life. Acceptance and fearlessness can make us very, very strong people, actually. And those are the two qualities I would like to apply to the world for the way ahead. This is what I'm going to try to be in life. Fearless. Don't fear illness. Don't fear poverty. Don't fear lack of kudos or anything. Just accept it as it is. Acceptance is a very powerful thing. And then instead of resisting life, we start to flow with it. And we actually see the universe is actually very beneficial to it. It's benign. It's not trying to harm us. We might have karma with us, but that karma we can also look at with that same action of acceptance. Accept it. This is my destiny. This is my fate. I go with it. I flow with it. And then I can be really happy, because I'm not not regretting what's been lost. I'm not regretting what hasn't come. I'm accepting it here and now as it is. And in this moment in time, always, things are pure happiness. This moment in time, this second now, this second, and always this eternal now is always filled with happiness. It's filled with bliss. It's filled with joy. It's filled with love when you get to the heart of it. It's filled with divine experience. And we can only ever find our divinity here and now in this moment. So don't worry about the future. Don't worry about the past. Live here and now. Live with the present. And in this moment, that is where happiness can be found. And it can also be found by buying some of my products. So have a look in the description below of some of the things I have to offer on my site to help you support the channel. I've mentioned about becoming a patron. There's also my Craig's Artificial Intelligence Oracle, Craig's AI. Have a look at that. That's some interesting stuff there. And of course, my books and things like that. So if you want to support the channel, please do that. And if you can't afford to support the channel, at least give us a thumbs up, because that helps us as well. So thank you all for your support through the year. And thank you from Jane as well, and from Boo the Cat, for you supporting us in this channel and following it like you do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. See you again in 2026. See you soon. Bye for now. If you enjoyed these videos and want to help keep them going, you might like to become a patron or a YouTube member. It helps the channel to thrive. It's a great way to support our work first and foremost, and feel that you're part of something bigger, helping us to share these spiritual ideas, these spiritual teachings with people all over the world. Now, as a member, you'll also get access to extra content, early notifications when I'm available for readings and Jane's available for readings, and you can also take part in online events and special members-only posts. Now, on Patreon in particular, you can also chat with me directly in the comments, share ideas, and we can connect with each other and with other like-minded people in our community. We've got some really nice people with us nowadays. And we also offer exclusive online events, sort of Zoom meetups and members-only shows. Plus, you'll get behind-the-scenes footage of me and Jane at home and in Italy, and footage of things that we don't share anywhere else. So if you'd like to be part of our inner circle and help us to keep this channel thriving, have a look at the links below.